Dracula, whose original name is Vlad III Dracula, assumes the role of the primary antagonist in the 2023 supernatural horror movie, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. This film draws its inspiration from Bram Stoker's Dracula, specifically the Captain's Log chapter. In his human life, Dracula was a prince of Wallachia. However, he transitioned into the infamous vampire who held dominion over Transylvania. He sustained himself by consuming the blood of the living, enslaving individuals as his blood donors, and creating new vampires. Eventually, he embarked on a journey to London aboard the ship known as the Demeter, with the intention of expanding his hunting territory. Throughout the voyage, he systematically eliminates the crew members, leaving only the main protagonist, Dr. Clemens, standing. Dr. Clemens is determined to track down Dracula and bring an end to his reign of terror. Javier Botet portrays Dracula in this film. Notably, Botet has portrayed various other memorable supernatural entities in different films, including the Crooked Man in the Conjuring 2 movie, Keyface in Insidious, The Last Key, and Slender Man in the 2018 film adaptation of the same name. Before we delve into the adaptation, let's take a look at the detailed origins of Dracula. A significant portion of his backstory remains shrouded in mystery, but Dracula, also known as Vlad III Dracula, once ruled over the people of Transylvania with an iron grip, instilling fear as his primary tool of control. During the cover of night, he would vacate his castle, venturing into neighboring villages to prey upon the inhabitants, sating his hunger by systematically hunting them down, all while weaving tales of his dread to ensure that no one dared to challenge him. To spare one particular village, they offered up a reluctant woman named Anna as his blood servant, to which he reluctantly agreed. Dracula would periodically drink from his new servant, but refrained from completely draining her. As his desire to expand his hunting grounds grew and he faced increasing difficulties in feeding himself, Dracula devised a plan to travel to London, anticipating a bountiful feast. He coerced the local Romanians into transporting him, along with his blood slave Anna and soil from Transylvania, in large wooden crates to the port of Varna. The locals recognized the ominous symbol of Dracula's dragon and trembled in fear. Their sole wish was to keep the creature away from their homeland, so they entrusted him to the crew of the ship Demeter, hoping for good fortune and invoking divine mercy. During the initial night at sea, Dracula emerged from his coffin to explore the ship and eradicate the rats infesting it, all while remaining undetected. He also bit his blood slave Anna before retiring to rest. In a subsequent incident, one of the crates fell and ruptured in the ship's cargo hold, revealing Anna buried within the soil. Recognizing her near-death state, Dr. Clemens provided her with blood transfusions to combat an apparent infection. However, on a night in the Aegean Sea, Clemens and Olgren witnessed a mysterious figure that they could not identify. While Clemens remained skeptical, chalking it up to his imagination, Olgren perceived it as a dire omen. That very night, Dracula finishes off all the animals on board, including the crew's dog, Huckleberry, for sustenance. Clemens attributed this to a rage-induced attack by the dog, a theory accepted by everyone except Olgren. Fearing a potential rabies outbreak, the crew disposed of all the animals overboard. Dracula, before returning to his coffin, yearned for Anna, famished and trembling. As the nights passed, Dracula, deprived of his blood servant and growing weaker from hunger, resorted to feeding on some of the crew members. He targeted a drunken Petrovsky on duty, luring him close before draining him. Dracula then discarded the lifeless body overboard before returning to his coffin. Suddenly, Anna awoke and sounded the alarm, warning the crew that Dracula was aboard the Demeter, and that they must escape before he finishes them all. Clemens attempted to engage her in a conversation to understand the situation better. She divulged information about a local monster in her village known as Dracula, unwittingly connected to her community. During a subsequent night, Dracula attacked 2 additional crewmates, leaving only Olgren alive but bearing bite marks. The next night, Olgren broke free and pursued Toby, trapping him in the captain's quarters with Dracula. As the crew attempted to rescue Toby, Dracula bit him. The following morning, Olgren spontaneously combusted with the rising sun. Hours later, realizing that Toby had perished, the crew prepared to bury him at sea. However, Captain Elliot noticed movement in Toby's supposedly lifeless body and investigated, only to be seized by the vampiric Toby as he too burst into flames. The remaining crew members decided to drown Dracula and sink the ship while he was still on board, preventing him from wreaking havoc in London. Wallachia perished while attempting to shoot Dracula and flood the ship. Captain Elliot secured himself to the ship's wheel in a final effort to steer the Demeter away from shore, but Dracula materialized behind him, ending Elliot's life as he lamented his disappointment. Clemens eventually stumbled upon the dying Elliot still tethered to the helm. Clemens then confronted Dracula, challenging him by declaring his lack of fear and denying him godlike status. Dracula, appearing as a monstrous vampire bat, launched an attack on Clemens, only for Anna to intervene, using a mass fragment to crush him. Anna and Clemens leaped overboard just before the ship's sinking, believing that Dracula would meet his demise. However, Dracula's assault on the captain prevented him from altering the ship's course, leading it to run aground on the coastline. In that moment, Dracula broke free and roared in victory. Subsequently, authorities discovered the grounded ship, but there were no survivors, except for Captain Elliot's diary, which recounted the harrowing events of the voyage. The next morning, still at sea, Anna revealed that during the final confrontation, Dracula had bitten her, causing her transformation into a vampire. Clemens had temporarily delayed her transformation through blood transfusions. Unwilling to become a monster like her master, Anna willingly allowed herself to be consumed by sunlight, choosing self-destruction. In London, Clemens sought solace in a local tavern where he sketched an image of Anna. Suddenly, he heard a familiar knock, the same used on the ship to signal everything was fine. Looking around, Clemens spotted Dracula, disguised as a human. The vampire smiled at the doctor, brushed past him, and caressed the scar on Clemens' neck, a reminder of their earlier encounter on the Demeter. Dracula left the establishment, with Clemens trailing him, vowing to finish him off in memory of his fallen comrades. Now for the review and opinions about the adaptation. This film pays a direct homage to Chapter 7 of Bram Stoker's Dracula, known as The Captain's Log. It boldly commences with the Demeter shipwreck, stranded on the rugged Whitby shores in England, with the loss of all crew members. From the outset, it announces itself as a tale about Dracula, implying a prequel element where Dracula remains alive. The movie portrays Dracula as akin to a malevolent force, even more demonic in appearance than Nosferatu. As he gains power and consumes the crew, his transformation is dramatic, making this depiction of Count Dracula one of the most terrifying ever seen, devoid of any gentility. For those well-versed in Dracula lore, this film offers a genuine treat. Chapter 7 of the original novel is known for its provocative and suggestive content, showcasing the creature's power and hinting at its destructive capabilities. The film's narrative shifts from the Demeter's wreck to a Black Sea port in Varna, Bulgaria, where Captain Elliot, played by Liam Cunningham, and his crew, including loyal friend Wojciech, are recruiting sailors and loading cargo for a journey to England. Mysterious crates marked with a black dragon symbol are part of their cargo, intended for an undisclosed recipient in London. These crates, unbeknownst to the crew, contain Count Dracula's coffin and soil from his Transylvanian castle, reflecting the rudimentary cargo inspection practices of the 19th century. Amidst these preparations, Dr. Clemens, a young Afro-Brit and Cambridge-trained physician portrayed by Corey Hawkins, is enlisted onto the Demeter after losing a royal surgeon appointment in Romania due to his race. Clemens rescues Captain Elliot's grandson and livestock handler, Toby, earning passage as the ship's doctor. Initially, the voyage to England proceeds smoothly, but two mysterious events disrupt the tranquility. One crate containing soil opens during rough seas, revealing Anna, a young woman who survived Dracula's predation. The presence of a woman on board is seen as an ill omen, exacerbated by the discovery of the ship's livestock destroyed and festering, indicating the vampire's presence. This sets the stage for the remainder of the film, as the crew faces relentless attacks by Dracula, mostly during their night watches. The crew is compelled to hasten their journey to England, realizing that the vampire is loose on the ship, which is now undermanned and vulnerable. André Ovredal, known for his work in horror films such as Troll Hunter and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, demonstrates his mastery in crafting suspenseful and shadowy scenes. The film is filled with an overwhelming sense of dread, as the audience knows the crew's fate from the beginning, and the question becomes whether they will fight back or become easy prey. The movie delivers unexpected twists and maintains a limited plot armor for its characters. While some of the sailors remain relatively anonymous, the lead actors deliver nuanced performances, with Hawkins and Cunningham standing out. Javier Botet's portrayal of Dracula in costume and makeup is noteworthy, akin to the work of Doug Jones and Andy Serkis in motion capture roles. However, some aspects of the Dracula story might require additional explanation for those unfamiliar with the source material. Notably, the film doesn't explicitly mention that Dracula himself orchestrated the property purchase in England, leading to the presence of coffins on the ship, which could be confusing for newcomers. Anna's role is hinted at but becomes clearer as the story progresses, as she is the most knowledgeable person on the ship regarding the vampire threat. As part of the universal universe of monsters, this film aligns well with The Invisible Man and Renfield. It takes the source material seriously, creating an impressive period piece with effective jump scares and a rich atmosphere. Ovredal drew inspiration from Alien for this film, which is evident in its execution. The plot of the movie is as follows. The fundamental premise of Bram Stoker's tale, The Captain's Log, is initially introduced in text, detailing the journey of the Russian schooner named the Demeter, tasked with transporting 50 mysterious wooden crates from Transylvania, Romania, to London. However, upon its arrival in London, the ship is discovered in a state of utter devastation, devoid of any crew members. The last voyage of the Demeter commences with the discovery of the Demeter on the shores of Whitby, England, on August 6, 1897, amid a violent storm. Upon inspection by authorities on land, it is revealed that the ship is entirely empty, except for a lone diary belonging to Captain Elliot, which contains a startling revelation of a looming, enigmatic threat that had brought ruin to the ship and now posed a danger to the people on land. The last voyage of the Demeter then transports us back 4 weeks, to the time when the Demeter was being loaded with various cargo in a Romanian port city. Among the cargo, a number of unmarked wooden crates pique curiosity, as their contents remain unknown to the ship's authorities. As the ship requires additional crew members, recruitment efforts are launched, leading to the enlistment of a few men. However, rumors have already begun circulating among the new recruits, suggesting that something sinister and perilous is contained within one of the crates, symbolized by a dragon-like emblem on its surface. Despite initial rejection, a man named Clemens ultimately secures a spot on the crew after bravely rescuing Captain Elliot's grandson, Toby, from danger and due to the departure of several crew members. As the grand vessel embarks on its voyage towards London, optimism abounds among the crew, buoyed by the prospect of reaching their destination on time and earning a bonus. Nevertheless, mysterious events gradually unfold on the Demeter. Unexpectedly, a young stowaway woman is discovered alive inside one of the wooden crates in the ship's hold. Clemens takes it upon himself to ensure Anna's safety when most of the other men aboard consider her an evil omen or, at the very least, bad luck, advocating for her abandonment at sea. Clemens, unlike his contemporaries, understands the sting of prejudice due to his racial identity. He is driven by a deep thirst for knowledge and a fascination with the sciences, prioritizing intellectual pursuits over material wealth. His background in medicine is a testament to his insatiable curiosity. However, the peculiar circumstances aboard the Demeter diminish the value placed on his skills as a doctor. When he seeks to protect Anna and administer blood transfusions, his decision is met with skepticism from the other men on board. Captain Elliot eventually permits him to assist Anna, but it comes at the cost of his personal provisions. As Anna's health improves and she begins to speak, the connection between the malevolent force haunting the Demeter and her traumatic ordeal is unveiled. Given the film's basis in Bram Stoker's Dracula, it becomes apparent that the enigmatic monster is intricately linked to the legendary vampire, Dracula. As the narrative unfolds, it becomes evident that the unmarked wooden crates from Transylvania harbor a sinister secret. Back in Romania, the affluent Dracula family continued their gruesome tradition of feasting on the blood and organs of the impoverished, mirroring Dracula's own tale. Anna's family fell victim to these horrors, and she grew up surrounded by stories and terror related to the Dracula family. In her youth, Anna was forcibly taken from her family home and confined within one of the crates, destined for shipment to England. Anna explains that the dwindling pool of potential victims in Transylvania prompted Dracula, in human form, to seek new territories. To achieve this, he concealed himself within one of the cargo crates, shipping himself to London. However, Dracula required a continuous source of fresh human blood to survive the lengthy sea voyage, which led him to take Anna on board as a blood source. For several nights, Dracula had fed on her blood. However, when Anna was discovered by Clemens and nursed back to health, Dracula's food supply was depleted, compelling him to emerge from his crate. Initially, he finishes the ship's dog and other animals meant for the crew's consumption before systematically attacking and finishing crew members, consuming their blood to sustain himself. Dracula also displayed remarkable intelligence, mocking and mimicking crew members and rationing his prey to ensure a continued supply of blood and meat. The crew aboard the Demeter initially struggled to accept the claims made by Anna and others. Captain Elliot, who had planned to retire at the end of the voyage and hand over the Demeter to first friend Wallachia, initially dismissed the notion of a monster, driven by his affection for the ship itself. Wachachia's deep attachment to the vessel fueled his initial reluctance to entertain the idea of a monster on board. However, as crew members began to die and disappear night after night, the crew began to take the matter seriously. The darkest moment in the last voyage of the Demeter occurs when young Toby falls victim to Dracula, leaving Captain and the others grief-stricken and baffled about how to combat the menace. Crew member Olgren survives a bite from Dracula, which introduces the possibility of further trouble since he becomes possessed by the vampire's spirit at night. After Toby's death, his body also becomes a vessel for the vampire, attempting to attack his grandfather until the rising sun incinerates him. Anna, had she not been found and saved in time, would have suffered a similar fate due to the vampire's bites. Dracula also demonstrates other powers, such as the ability to fly and launch attacks from the sky. Some crew members cling to their religious faith as protection against the vampire's assaults. However, these efforts prove futile, as religious symbols and holy objects have no effect on Dracula. Ultimately, the remaining crew members conclude that their only hope of survival is to abandon the ship and destroy it with Dracula aboard. With the ship nearing the English coast, they believe they can row the remaining distance in smaller boats. This plan is thwarted when Dracula finishes off Wallachia before he can set fire to the ship. By this time, Captain Elliot has also met his demise, leaving only Clemens and Anna to confront the threat. Dracula captures Clemens but is thwarted by Anna,